Welcome back to the channel. We are the Movie Marathon Men. I'm Owen Garner.
And I'm Luke Carr.
And we watch films that make us go, mmm. So today we're doing another episode in Saga Wars. We've been covering the Mad Max saga, and today it's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
So I forgot the name of the film there when I did the intro, which is why I went, and I didn't want to say something that was wrong.
Yeah.
And they called it Beyond Thunderdome. Thunderdome's not in it a whole lot. I think they sort of picked
because they go beyond.
They go beyond the Thunderdome. That's cool,
Yeah.
that's true, but you could use that about almost anything in the past.
Yeah,
I suppose they didn't want to call it Mad Max and the children.
Yeah.
It's Mad Max Babysitter.
Yeah, so straight out the bat, my first note is that I loved The Road Warrior. So I hope there isn't a drop-off.
Kids!
Yeah, it's
That's my notes, exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Kids. Adults acting as kids.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to Tina Turner.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I thought, great, this is what these films need, is just throw in a pop star. And I'm being serious.
Yes,
that sounds a bit snide, but no, I was like, yes, throw in someone who is all performance, all like image, like you know, a pop star has that sort of like, okay, and she's like a proper diva as well, and so she's a great fit for this movie, and I was really excited. Her songs as well throughout the film, loved.
Yeah, she may be a diva. She's not a driver.
I think she does drive at one point.
She drives, but trivia, can't drive a manual, so they had to make a special car for her to drive an automatic.
Really?
Yeah. I actually was a bit perplexed about the reputation of this film for the first 25, 30 minutes, or maybe up to the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it so thoroughly, and I thought this is a perfect jump from the world is starting to be structured in an unstructured way.
Yeah.
And then now it is structured in a crazy way.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world understands the rules of it, and it makes sense, and it's horrible, but it's what you would want from after two. This all made sense.
Yeah.
And then, as often happens both in films and in life, it was ruined by kids.
Yeah, it really, really was. I mean, I've not talked about the kids yet because I've got like a full page of notes before we get to that bit, really. Because, as you say, the opening of this film is so good.
Yeah.
Like, watch it just for the opening.
Yeah.
There was a film that I watched the other day. I can't even remember what it is, but it fades to black at some point. And I knew watching it, I was like, this is where I want the film to end. But it didn't end there. Horrible stuff went on to happen. Yeah. And it's like, you kind of want this film to end. You want it to be like a half-hour episode.
Yeah. And
you want it to end when he leaves the Thunderdome. And you'd be like, oh, cool. I guess that's what's going on. The world building, as always, incredible. There's a brilliant bit with a Geiger counter. There's a brilliant bit with a Geiger counter.
With Lady Gaga.
With Lady Geiger counter. Yeah. Which just tells such an interesting story. And we already know that there's been a nuclear fallout, but it's just like, oh, hey, remember this. And it's also shows how savvy Max is, just things like that. And it just shows how people are just scumbags these days. Like that guy's trying to sell tainted water.
Yeah.
And he revels in it.
Yeah.
He's like what's a bit of dirty water, huh?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, a bit of fallout never hurt anyone. And you're like, oh my god,
this looks around. It's pretty much.
It's like
quite a few people.
Society is in ruins. And you're just going for it.
I think as well, this film could be. You could just watch this film as a without having seen two, without having seen one. You're not having to sort of rely on. Oh, after two, he went and did this, and then he did that, and here are the people. Yeah. It carries nothing from the previous film.
I did think that the gyro captain was back.
Oh,
because it's Bruce
so
Spence.
Many notes.
I think
it's the same. Is it Bruce Spence?
Yeah, I
Bruce
think that's the actor, and it's the same. And he flies. It's clearly Bruce Spence can fly. Like, he's got like a pilot's license,
Yeah.
and clearly knows George Miller, because I think he's in another George Miller film.
Who gave George Miller the license to just put the same guy in this next film?
Yeah,
It's
and
the same guy, but not have him be the same guy.
His teeth aren't the same.
Yeah, it's a different character.
So the gyro captain has really like kind of dirty teeth.
Yeah.
Like, they've sort of made him look a bit more gnarly.
He's called like Jebediah or something in this one,
He's like Jeddah the pilot or something.
Jedediah. Yeah. And I thought it was the same guy.
Yeah.
I was so
And
confused.
also there's a kid, and you think, oh right, the
It's
feral
savage
kid's
kid,
cleaned up.
Because when they meet...
I've written in my notes, they're back. You've got to change him entirely. Like, you've got to change the way that he looks entirely.
Yes. Oh, it was so weird.
Yeah, so that was really quite confusing. I was, though, very impressed by the scale of this movie. Everything is bigger. Again, it's just like, okay, here's more of a budget, so you can kind of do what you want a bit more than before. So you get that, and Bartertown is incredible.
Well, that's it. That feels like a place.
Yeah.
Like, it really feels like a place. And they've taken some time to work out the structure of it. And they haven't got bogged down in the structure of it. But they've explained it in a way that makes sense to the world. I think it's great. And I love the idea of the Thunderdome.
It's so
and
good.
It means the film has like an early climax that feels kind of organic.
Yeah.
And it left me thinking, well, where's the rest of the story going?
Yeah.
I didn't expect the answer I got.
Yeah.
But... When he like at 40, it's quite early on. It's like under an hour that he's...
I was concerned because I was really enjoying the film, and I'm like, ooh, we've already got to the Thunderdome.
We sort of rushed through.
What's going to happen in this film? Because I sort of didn't know.
Yeah.
But loved the Thunderdome. It was incredible. The rules of the Thunderdome are the rules of society.
Yeah.
It just works.
Yeah, this is it. There's so much to admire about the first bit.
Let's move on to talking about the second bit again, because I've said Max, the reluctant father figure, a continued theme, and then literally the next note is a bit too kiddie, really.
I was
just
a
immediately
viewer, to be honest.
Yeah.
So without consent, the film was showing me the story.
It has
I didn't sign up for this.
Cartoon logic, which the previous two films did not have.
Yeah, it just something about those kids just took me out of the film massively.
Yeah.
I've written it all the way through my notes, but it's just like it. And the crazy people are the wrong sort of crazy. They're like boring crazy. They're like real life crazy. They're just deluded. I want wacky people, not just sort of ill. People. And the kids are just kids, and I can't remember who any of them are. They all look the same. And they spoke the
also
same,
one of the more interesting kids, because it's always the older ones that are more interesting because they're just actually better at acting, is left behind, and it's like, just have the Lost Boys be in it. That's fine. I mean, it's not. Yeah. But if you're gonna do that, that's fine. But make them interesting. Yeah. Have only good actors doing it, and have a bunch of kids, but 5 that we know. And you can have one little kid, and then just a bunch of 20-year-olds playing kids.
Yeah, and the thing is, they explain... It's where you, the audience, know something, and the film has to take, 45 minutes to get on the same page as you. I'm not saying the film is too stupid, but you put... Every character in the film for those 45 minutes is too stupid. Yeah. And Max has no intention of speeding them along. No. He just sort of sits there for about 10 minutes as they present to him as Captain Walker.
It's funny that he's like, oh, so I guess I just become a dictator of this little this little tribe.
Just sits there and lets it happen. And then after it's happened, he goes, oh yeah, that's not me. And tries to leave. Yeah. And I said, well, why didn't I have to? Well, I knew you weren't that guy. I watched the other films. Yeah. And then they go to the plane and all this stuff, and they just they mess around for a while, and it's like, well, we know they're wrong, and we know why they're wrong. I just didn't need to spend that long on it, because now there's not a lot of film left. Because in other Mad Max films, this would be a scene. Yeah. Whereas it's multiple scenes. It's a whole part of the movie. It's half of the movie. Half the movie. In another Mad Max, this would just be like a town that they went through, and it would be really sad. Yeah. You would see it would play out, and you'd be really sad. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, this world is so brutal. And but the film doesn't kill enough people and move along and stuff like that for me. They've been so brutal. Yeah. And then there are kids. It's too Steven Spielberg-y. They're hitting baddies with frying pans. Yeah. What? Come on. It's the same as it is in so many, obviously Star Wars does it with the Ewoks. Yeah. Some people like that. But to me, it just ruins the tension if there was any. Like when they just start like slingshotting things. Yeah, when they smack people with frying pans, when they just sort of like they run under someone's legs, and it's like this big baddie who's supposed to be really threatening.
Yeah.
And instead, it's just like a kid going and like beating them. It just ruins it.
And they wander through the world as children, and they just sort of like wander into some scenes, and Max is like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And it's like, but in that world, they would just like, it's a brutal world. Yeah. They would be killed. And
it's a bit too like happy. Like every time they win, Max is kind of looking like at the end. He's just looking around. You have like the kids there, and the kids like, "Yeah, woo!" And Max is like, "Ha ha ha ha." Yeah.
Oh, I hated the score.
Yeah.
I hated the score. It's sorry to whoever made it, because that's actually horrible. But it was way too triumphant.
That's what I mean. Yeah, but
like these movies are dark. They're gritty.
It's like Max wins by destroying some sort of moral code. Like he does something horrible to a person because he needs to survive. And this is like, oh, woohoo, yeah, we're winning.
Yeah,
we're winning, and we're doing it morally.
Yeah, no, it just really didn't work for me in that sense. And the score is a big part of that. Yeah, because it tells you how to feel about a scene that's playing out.
And speaking of scores,
so up first we've got story. What have you given this for story? I'm ready to mark mine down based off what you're about to say.
5.
Oh right, yeah, I've given it a 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
I gave it a 5, which after I just said everything I just said, it sounds a bit generous.
Yeah, really.
I think it's just so. The first bit I loved. I wouldn't say as much as 2, but it's not even that. It's not a drop off really for me.
No,
really.
It continues. Like if it stayed Bartertown Thunderdome, If the bit where, because I don't mind that he leaves and then comes back.
No.
And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, because it's obviously where the film is going.
Yeah.
It's just the people that he meets in the second bit, and they're always more interesting in the other Mad Max movies.
Yeah. I actually think I'm going to bring mine down to a 4.
Yeah.
Because more of this film is the tribe. And it's what I'm left with. Like, every time I want to start speaking about how good the first bit is, I just lead into how much I don't like the second bit.
Yeah. So what have you given it score-wise?
A 5, but I've changed it to a 4.
I think I'm going to drop mine to a 4.
Yeah.
Because the opening is great.
Yeah.
Really love it. The world's at a really interesting place. The society that is set up, the sort of runs of it, the different kinds of characters that we meet, they're all really interesting. What would have been way more interesting is if instead of a tribe of kids who have no idea what's going on, a tribe of elderly people who are terrified.
Yeah.
This world, they're not fit for it. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they need their hero. They need their Max.
Just anything but what they did.
Yeah. The films are, I would say, interestingly, sort of disability aware.
Yes.
Disability positive.
Yeah.
I was really worried. There's a bunch of elements in the first 3 that I was like, oh, this is going to age poorly. Like, oh, this character's in it. Oh, this isn't going to be good. And then it was.
Yeah.
It was fine. And it was so that it's such a rich human tapestry that we see. There are so many different faces and body types and people from different places. And it's great to see that.
I think it speaks, whilst that is a very excellent point, it speaks to this film's story that you're having to talk about other films.
Yes.
In the story section for this one.
Let's move on to character, shall we?
I've been really generous here.
So, character, what have you given it?
7. I'm surprised by that.
I've given it a 6.
Yeah, I don't know why I've given it a 7.
You are going to have to justify that. I've said that some are great. Max is slightly less compelling.
So, I've said Max is fun at the start. Everyone at the Thunderdome is great. And then the kids let this down. And I don't think that it's a 7 on that basis. I think that the side characters are fun. I think Max is good. Not as good as he was in the last one. Mm-hmm. If he's Maximilian in the second one.
Yeah.
Is that Max 1,000 here?
Yeah.
He's not peak Max. He speaks a bit.
He was only Max 100 in the first one, really.
Yeah.
So he's more Max here.
He's more Max here than in the first one. But he's still not that compelling, really. And it's only at the start that he's all right. In the second half, he's just...
Yeah.
What's going on?
His character doesn't make sense in the world that they put him.
No.
Because it's too kiddie and too triumphant. It's too Amblin Media, as you've said.
He just sort of sits around and he's like, no, we're going to stay here. And then the other characters are being sort of proactive. And he just kind of sat there like cleaning a gun or something.
So yeah, I've said that some people are good, but I've written in my notes the kids were kids.
Yeah.
The villains are good.
Yeah, but
their interplay is interesting.
Yeah.
So they work well. And this film, I think, lives and dies on the inclusion of Bartertown, the Thunderdome, the villains. Master Blaster was a cool kind of villain.
Yeah.
And so there are bits that worked. So what have I given it? I've given it 6. I'm going to mark it down to 5 because it literally is half and half. Half work, half really don't.
I'm going to put mine down right the way to a 4.
Yeah.
The kids make it more worse than the good people make it good.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4 again.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next category. We're sort of zipping through these, aren't we? But there's not as much to say about this film.
No.
Well, there's not as much positive stuff. So let's go on to production. What have you given production?
This one I've given a 7 out of 10, and I will stick by that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd written 10. I said it looks incredible, an amazing scale. Yeah. The effects are amazing, and the costumes never disappoint. Yeah. I'm actually going to knock off 2 points for that score. It really wound me up, and it's just thinking about it now. Yeah, is like looking back on it. I'm like, that is the wrong tone. Like you've changed the score to a tense score. Yeah, the kids can still be there being kids and winning the day by mischief, which is always the most annoying like story point of like anything. It's why some Steven Spielberg films work and like others that try and do it don't.
Yeah, and I think it sounds a lot like we're saying this film's not enough geared towards like 12-year-old boys. Yeah. Us. Like it's not like focusing on cars and crashes and this and that. But that is what this franchise is. Yeah. This Mad Max is cars and crashes, crazy people in Australia. Yeah. I'm not saying that's all it has. But that is it. It's all it has. It does it so well. It's
one man, a car, and the wasteland.
You can't like
there's your pitch.
Shoehorn Mad Max into a different story thing and keep it the same. Like it's what were you even on there? Production.
I hit production. Yeah. So
the effects are all right. Yeah.
So let's move on to rewatch. Mm-hmm. I've looked at all of my scores and I'm ready to mark them down already.
We marked down across the board.
Yeah, so watching these. We hadn't watched Mad Max, The Road Warrior, or Beyond Thunderdome. No. So that was one of the reasons that this was a really exciting thing for us to watch, and went in and was slightly disappointed by Mad Max, blown away by The Road Warrior, and then went into this with high expectation and was slightly let down.
I think the film, in a way, did a disservice by starting so strongly because I had low expectations because I knew it. I just sort of through culture knew it wasn't that well received.
Same.
So I expected to not enjoy it, and if it started not great, I would have been okay, fine, I'll settle in for this. Yeah. But then it started well. Yeah. And then the bad part was so contrasted. Like it was such an easy comparison to make. Yeah. But yeah, my rewatch, I've given it a 5.
You can call time of death on this movie.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing. Like, it was alive. It was doing its thing, and yeah. So yeah, for me, rewatch. I'd written 8. I think it's a 5. Yeah, I think it's a 5 at most. I might even talk myself down. I've said very easy viewing. I don't know if I agree with that. The kids are annoying. I mean, you can just ignore that bit. So if I'm saying on a rewatch, if I was like, oh, it's the kids bit. Oh, I need to just go do those dishes. So, Luke, M Factor, what are you thinking?
So I've given it a 6, and I'm a bit conflicted about that actually, because again, I'm going to repeat myself for the 5th time in a row. The start has it, the second half doesn't have it, and I think the fact that we were able to draw a comparison to Steven Spielberg says that it's not as an original. So it's like it's not its own thing. Like we watched that second half, and it blurred together with like so many other films that we've seen in the past.
Yes. And so it's not. It doesn't have that individuality.
Yeah, because
that Mad Max films should.
Because that's why the other two are so high.
I think I'm going to give it a 5. I'd originally written 7.
Yeah.
I've said it is a Mad Max film.
Yeah.
And on that merit alone, like that carries a lot of M factor because, I mean, the Thunderdome stuff is great. Love that. The costumes are brilliant. They never disappoint. The kids' costumes I didn't think worked as well. They were just a bit silly.
Yeah.
They played into the silliness of that like whole idea. One of them's like wearing like a switchboard from a plane or something. Like it's just a bit too much like oh, well, I see exactly where you got that from. Whereas a lot of the costumes from the other movies, you sort of don't know where all these things have been cobbled together from. And so they tell an interesting story.
Yes. Yeah.
These costumes didn't tell an interesting story because it was like, well, I know exactly where they're from. And that you've made this weird like misunderstanding. I just don't understand how young the kids had to be to not understand a plane. But yeah, it's a 5 on M factor because the bits that work, the bits that don't,
yeah.
Let's go to some reviews, shall we?
Well, yes. So this is strange. Critics 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, audience 49%.
Yeah. Okay. So the audience are right. What's happened? Critics?
Yeah.
What?
Trivia about this film, by the way. Mm-hmm. There's like none. Like this film just doesn't seem to exist. Like I've got bits here. They're not that interesting though. I'll rattle through them if you want.
Yeah, go on.
Tina Turner shaved her head and was really happy to do it. Which is strange because she then had to wear a wig the entire time.
You can tell that they're wearing wigs at one point, and you can tell that Mel Gibson's wearing a wig. There's a bit where there's a reverse shot scene of them, and you can tell that they're both wearing wigs, which is bad.
Yeah.
Like and it's like, I would rather her be bald.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, that's why I don't know if she shaved her head to be bald, and they went, nah, put a wig on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the film nearly ruined the local pork production because they had so many. We're going to buy so many of the local pig population to put in the pig bit.
Yeah.
They didn't, of course. They had to come some sort of agreement with the local farmers where they like used the pigs for the film and I guess gave them back at different times so they could farm them. The end of the sandstorm. It was a real sandstorm.
Yep.
They just it started sandstorming whilst they were filming, so they just carried on.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So on George Miller, right? So he wanted to make a Lord of the Flies kind of film.
Right.
Anyway, Lost Boys sort of thing. Someone from Warner Brothers came to him and said, "Oh, so this sort of film you're trying to make with the Lost Boys, the Lord of the Flies? What if you just shut Mad Max in there?"
Yeah.
And then they did. So George Miller on this film.
Yeah.
He was supposed to direct a film called Contact.
Oh, right. Yeah. The science one.
Yeah. And Warner Brothers did want him to direct it. I assume they maybe had signed a contract or something already. So he was like signed on, going to direct it. They really wanted Robert Zemeckis to direct it. Yeah. Probably a person who should have directed the Lost Boys bit of this film. Yeah. But they really wanted him to direct it. So they traded George Miller they said, don't step down, go away, do whatever else you want, and we'll give you the rights to the Mad Max sequels. So not the whole but so if anyone ever wants to make a Mad Max sequel, George Miller is the one that has the rights,
right?
Not any studio, which is why we got Fury Road and then Furiosa so much later.
Yeah,
because it's just George Miller, the one in charge.
That's great though. Great for him because when we were talking about the Terminator,
and the fact that
James
sold
Cameron
it immediately.
had to sell it, but also for $1.
Yeah.
That's such a good deal.
Which is why you got Terminator 3, Salvation, Genesis, all this stuff. Whereas Mad Max, they didn't bring back Mel Gibson in 2 years.
So funny that Warner really didn't know what they were missing out on.
I never even heard of Contact. I'm sure it was a reasonable deal at the time, but the idea that they traded Mad Max, not for the film, just for George Miller to not direct the film. Yeah, it's a crazy thing.
That is mad, and because it's 30 years. So Beyond Thunderdome is 1985.
Yeah.
And Fury Road is 2015.
Yeah.
So it's literally, he waited 30 years until, he was held back by the technology of his time. And he just waited. The
sort of public persona of the people in his film. And
waited until he was able to make the film that he wanted to. And then did. And it's great. It's how brilliant for him. Let's round off, shall we, with our watch or not? And I've written a lot for watch or not. If you can see that,
that's a whole page.
It really is.
That's more words than Mad Max said.
It is. Yeah. I've said you can watch, and I do think that this has more than world building.
Yeah.
No, I don't actually, because
Well,
I was going to say, it's got the Thunderdome, it's got Bartertown. That's world building.
Yeah. So my answer is barely yes.
Is it?
Barely.
It is a yes.
It's a barely. It's crazy that this is a yes and Mad Max 1 is a no.
I think it's a no. I think I've talked myself around to a no.
I think I said yes because it does bridge the gap between 2 and the worlds that you're going to see in Fury Road and Furiosa. Like the idea of it being Bartertown and it's a civilization and it's the Thunderdome stuff.
Yeah.
Is very Fury Road.
It is.
And probably Furiosa.
Yeah.
For that reason, I said yes. But honestly, actually, it's a yes, but the moment he leaves the Thunderdome, you can just switch off.
I would say maybe it's a yes watch and watch it back to back.
Yeah.
Watch
it overlapping. Just start watching Fury Road halfway through.
I would say watch The Road Warrior and just go straight into Beyond Thunderdome, because you'd watch The Road Warrior, be riding high, watch the beginning of Beyond Thunderdome and be still really enjoying it, and the goodwill that you had going into
carry you through.
I think it's a higher point to be sloping off to, because then it does curve up at the end a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that if you just watch, because for me the Road Warrior starts up here, ends up here, like it's still great the whole time. I think that this suffers from its own success in its opening act of being great, then being terrible, then being fine. Yeah. So if you've watched, so let's say it's the first half hour, if you've watched 2 great hours and then you've got 40 minutes of not so great and 20 minutes of fine, that is more enjoyable overall, I would say. You've got that sort of sunk cost value of you're going, here's this world, we're in it and I'm enjoying it, and it dips a little bit, but it's still cool. And
these are such strong arguments for this film.
I know, but
you'll
the
be in a state of
Thunderdome
Stockholm syndrome for most of the second act.
Yeah, the Thunderdome stuff is so good that you don't want to miss out on that. Like that whole fight sequence in there, it's so good. So it's interesting to hear that he did want to make that Lost Boys movie, because to me, I'd written in my notes that they do feel like 2 separate movies pushed together,
and they should have been 2 separate movies kept very far apart.
They absolutely should. So there, watch or not, what are we saying? It's a tentative yes. I think
it's like
there we are. If you want. Well, we'll be back next time with another episode of Saga Wars. We're continuing Mad Max, going on to potentially our favourite Mad Max Fury Road. But until then, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps us here on the channel. Goodbye. We've sort of looked more and more bedraggled as the day's gone on.